an artist evening, a series of programs that we're organizing about neurodivergence in the arts, focusing a bit on questions around how can we help art education to be more supportive to the neurodivergent, because they're so attractive, neurodivergent that we should. But also just to present amazing work by amazing makers. And we have on here, as I mentioned, Genevieve Murphy. How do I pronounce your name?
In Scotland it's Genevieve.
Yeah, Genevieve. Yeah. Genevieve, I didn't know her work at all. And then Annelies, my co-curator for this program, showed me the link. And it cost me a whole night watching all the videos. Immediately, it was amazing. Very interesting work. From someone who was in practice as a composer and performing music artist, theatrical performance artist. I found her work very touching and engaging at the same time. Musically exciting, but especially fascinating the way she presents herself as a true person, very vulnerable on stage. In the meantime, entertaining is like crazy. We can talk a little bit more after your presentation. So I hand the microphone to you now.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Great to be here. Okay, I'm just going to fire in, give some, it's on, I just doing this. I'll just give a quick general information about my work, my practice, and then I'm going to share two works with you in more depth. It makes a lot of sense why I would be here with this kind of topic. Because my work is very personal. Also, if I'm experiencing discomfort in some way, I immediately want to look into that and want to make a work about it. And it's not necessarily that I need to, say exactly what the thing is, but I want to try to understand if other people feel similar discomforts and what are those symptoms underneath. So what I noticed in general with all of my work is that it's the absolute bottom line, even though if I make a subject about obsessive compulsive disorder or perfectionism or fear, like phobia, underneath control is actually the subject. So I realized, and this was never a plan, but in all of my works, if I look back, I realized that the subject of control has been running through all of my work. So it's almost like my work has told me this, that this becomes the essence of every subject around trying to be in this world, basically. So I am a composer, a performer, also a musician. I make work in a gallery, so I studied composition, that's my education, but in that I made a dance piece. When I graduated, I started to really think about the concepts, and then where do those concepts suit. So for example, this work in a gallery, I use a manuscript on the floor, so you have the 5 lines, which is what you would use to compose music on. Except that this is a very physical performance where I walk up and down this line. And this paper is around 25 meters long, and I walked up and down this line for 12 hours. And so these kind of things are, I try to put myself through certain experiences, either in the process of making a piece or in the piece itself. And this one was around obsessive compulsive disorder. But I'm not going to go too far into that. I just give you a quick feeling of an overview. Also make work in theatres. So this one is a kitchen, and it's around perfectionism. So it starts by being very neat and very organized. And so, for example, if you were to fill a sink perfectly, you would fill the water to the brim, but with one more drop and the water would overflow. So I'm always interested in that tipping point between perfectionism and when something falls into destruction, which is my life in general. And then I also compose for ensembles, and this piece specifically is looking into, well, I'm trying to share my personal perspective of autism, which my brother is autistic, so I don't try to say what autism feels like, but I try to try to give my perspective as a sister, and then hopefully I can help those that don't have autism understand and acknowledge the kind of complexity of autism and how that is if you're nearby to it. And this is something my brother does, is that he shouts and full on with his mouth open. So I integrated this into the piece and got everybody to do it, which I found out is actually quite an invasive thing to ask classical musicians to open their mouth wide. They don't like doing it. It took some trust. So, and also I have a band. I'm from Scotland. I play the bagpipes, and I integrate my performances and my stories. I love storytelling, and we, play in more of a rock context. So you get a big range of the kind of fields and approaches that my work exists in. But in general, there is this subject all of the time around emotion, around subjects of disability, and personal experiences. A work that I want to share with you is called Fine. I made this around 8 years ago. While I was in therapy, actually, a therapist said to me, "Do you know what FINE stands for?" And I said, "Well, no." And she said, "Fucked, insecure, neurotic, exhausted." And usually when you say, "How are you?" "Yeah, I'm fine," it's often a kind of a barrier, just kind of, "I'm fine." And now, I never used to use it because I thought it didn't mean anything, but now it means everything to me, so I use it all the time. So I composed this for ensemble called New Ensemble, who are a contemporary music ensemble in Musikabau. So I was also really interested in the form of a classical concert. For me, it's not something that I really feel close to, this kind of ritual of the musicians entering. They're all wearing black, and they bow and they sit and they have the music stands, and so I had an idea that I wanted to bring colour into the space, playfulness, try to kind of break down the barrier of the formalities of a classical concert, but also see how can I create something personal on stage. So how can I work with the audience and the musicians relating to one another, and who are these musicians behind their instruments? So already you see that I've given them quite an impractical task. They have their instruments plus a balloon on a stick, and they need to stick the balloon onto the music stand. So the chaos has already begun. It takes a very long time also, it's not at all efficient. A cellist asking an audience member to hold his cello, which you usually don't even touch the case of a cello, never mind the cello itself. in general, like in this piece, there are 5 works, all very short pieces. This is the second one. So you saw in the clip before that this then comes up on the projection. So the audience can see this, and they see then the score that the musicians have for the next piece. This is a stroke test. It's a concentration test. It's testing, all sorts of things about your concentration, but it was shown to me to show how the mind works also when it comes to phobia. So, for example, if you're afraid of spiders, you zoom in on that spider, but you don't look at the fact that it's like the size that it is in relation to yourself. You just see that thing and it's gigantic. So it's looking at how your mind has a hard time sometimes in zooming into the details. So with this, if you read the word itself, you can read pretty fast: red, brown, brown, red, blue, 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 purple, red, brown, blue. But if you switch to reading the color of the word instead of the word itself, you start to hesitate. It starts to become much more difficult. Maybe somebody can try it. Does somebody want to try it for me? Just the top line, just an example. Go on. Yes. Okay, you just do it on there. You know you might.
Brown, purple, green, blue, green, brown, red, blue, purple, purple, red.
Yeah, do it. Right? It takes some thought. So what I did for these musicians is that I got them to start all together in sync with the conductor reading the words. And then, as you see this one that says red here has a line through it, that means that they have to switch to reading the colour of the word instead of the word itself. And they each have that in different points in their own score. So it means that one after the other, they start to hesitate. And the aim is, and what I tell them is, don't skip any words, just make sure you get to the end. So if you leave the group, it's fine, but you just have to keep persisting. So slowly, over time, everything falls apart. And what I also really like is that in a concert hall, they're shouting colours, and that immediately triggers the audience to have colour in their mind. I'll give you, now you can hear this.
Red, brown, brown, red, blue, 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 purple, red, brown, blue, red, purple, purple, brown, green, blue, red, green, blue, green, brown, red, green, purple, red, blue, purple, brown, brown, green, brown, brown, red, purple, brown, purple, purple, green, blue, 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 green, green, red, purple, red, red, brown, blue, red, purple, red, purple, red, red, purple, blue, brown, purple, green, green.
Here's someone's already gone.
Green, purple, purple, red, green, purple, red, green, blue, blue.
So something that also, the way that I composed it meant that there is always somebody alone at the end. And this is because this whole suite is inspired by insecurity, perseverance, and humor. And it is really important to show this vulnerability of this one person and that sensation when they reach the end. And then they join the pack again. They join their ensemble, and the audience also, you hear in them this empathy towards this musician. So this for me is really, really important to also just say that these sensations of vulnerability and insecurity are there, they're present, and our minds work like this. We get stuck, we get confused, we hesitate, and we should just allow that to be there and not try to cover that. So I create situations where they can't cover it, and they just have to trust the environment. The next one is inspired by karaoke. There's nobody singing, but it's also the feeling that the whole audience are reading along. So we're all reading together, so it's just a kind of feeling of togetherness within the hall. I won't play it all, but you just get an idea. That this is so there's all these kind of playful things going on, and then in the next piece it's just a tape piece, and this is about my grandmother, who is a recording of my grandmother who had Alzheimer's, at the beginning stage of Alzheimer's. I'll talk a bit afterwards.
I can't think of the rest of that. It's playing Rock of Ages, Claire for me. Can't sing it, but I don't know the rest of it. Yeah, I know the word. Ages, Claire for me. La 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 la. The only thing we know is for me.
Rock of Ages.
For me.
Yeah, we let the notes Rock of Ages. Go on, sing it again.
Rock of Ages, clap for me. Mother and your aunt could sing so well.
I'm the aunt, you're the grandma. You're the grandma. Oh, you're the grandma. Yes, you're the grandma. What are you? You're Genevieve's grandma. I'm her mother. You're a what? I'm Genevieve's mother and you're her grandma. I'm not grandma. You are grandma. You're not my mother. No, tell me I'm not your mother. You're my mother. I feel like your mother. No, you're my mother.
Oh,
So I think something that the reason why I started to record was the sound of their voices. I was in another room and I thought, wow, this is an incredible combination of this old woman's voice and my mother's voice of this generation. And of course then when she came out with this, it was also really fascinating that music and a hymn could stay in her memory, yet knowing who she is, that's not something that was possible. and also the humour that is connected then within that. I really wanted to show how we can laugh through these really painful moments, and that they are also a sign of strength and a way of processing. So this piece, obviously, after the kind of fun of the first three pieces, it did create a kind of heaviness in the room. And then the thing that I wanted was to also just have a piece of music, and to say that music can be there on its own as saying its own thing. And to me, this next piece is the part where you just say, I'm fine, I'm fine. What I want to add also about those 5 works is that I was going through, when I was making the piece, I was really going through my own personal work. And but what I wanted to actually, what I felt is that what I was going through is very hard to fully understand. And what I would rather do is find ways where there's really these very specific things that I am working on, one being insecurity, and how can I take that away from myself and my personal story and put it in the middle where I can find if other people also experience insecurity. Maybe their symptoms are different. Maybe they go running too much, or they drink too much, or they overwork, or something like that. Everybody has their own symptoms out of that, but is there the core that we can all connect to? And also bringing in the subject of my grandmother, that is still saying that there are personal things going on in my life, but it's also ways that other people can find a way to relate. The other piece that I just want to share with you is called I Don't Want to Be an Individual All on My Own, which is a solo performance. And I think I'm going to show you the music video, which will be happening on Museum Night. And I made this before I made the piece. And the piece, there's a theatre piece that I made about my 8th birthday party. And the reason why I tell a story for that piece is that I want to try to work with empathy. And I find that storytelling is a way to build characters and help the audience to relate to the certain characters within the story and have their own understanding of it. This one song, the lyrics are about somebody else's feeling and me having empathy for them. And what is that empathy? Is it my feeling of their feeling? And then I can say that it's their feeling, it's not my feeling, but am I just projecting into them? So it's working with that. And it's also happened just at the time of COVID, so everything, suddenly the theatre piece couldn't be made, and so I made a music video, and this is when we kind of looked, I was working with the director, Julian Hetzel, and this is where we were looking at the screen, and how far can I go with my facial expressions in order to work with emotion behind the screen. One take.
When I learned to have empathy for someone else's reality,
People think this is computer generated, but it is just my face. Thanks to my dad, I think I just genetics. So I'll just quickly talk about the theatre piece that came after this, and then we should go on to the questions. So the theatre piece itself, the audience wear headphones. So when they come in, they only hear subwoofers just playing some bass beats, and I'm there dancing with an instrument, and they kind of think, okay, what's this? And when they put the headphones on, then they're inside the world where they hear the music that I'm playing. So every audience member has their own headphones, and this is a binaural microphone. So this is sitting in the center of the stage, and these are ears, as you see, and they are the ears of the audience members, and it records or it amplifies the space. So if I would walk around in a circle around these ears, they would hear in their own head me walking around their head. So they really feel like I'm basically creating an immersive experience on stage that they then have as if they are this microphone on the stage. Hope that makes sense. So I work with having the stage quite minimal and just finding ways to tell my story. And my story is about my 8th birthday party. And it was a bit of a crazy one. And my mom's an artist, visual artist. She invited all of her artist friends. And because this subject's around empathy, this story was important because there were certain characters there which were looking pretty bizarre. There's one guy who has his jaw's forward, and he has these really long teeth, 4 long teeth that are gold, coming out, and then he's completely tattooed from head to foot with leaves all over him. And this kind of what really fascinates me with this is that certain characters like that, if you feel a kind of I don't understand you, you want to go away from them, you want to avoid them. And what I was trying to show in this work is that if you approach things with curiosity, you can learn more about a person that you don't understand. And this also came out of my process when I was trying to overcome fear of spiders, is that I understood that part of my fear is the fact that I can't predict their move, and therefore I can't control the situation, and therefore I just wanted to be killed or be out of the space. And this can happen also with people and things like that in society. It can be out of fear. So I try to kind of show if we can learn the patterns of things that we don't understand. Slowly, through curiosity, we can start to learn more about them and therefore gain trust. And so through the piece, I worked with the audience to try to have empathy for these characters, which at the beginning come across as quite scary, and by the end we all feel that we've been in the party together and we start to understand these certain characters. And then when is it that in the end actually the people that seem the most normal turn out to be the ones that we really don't understand, and the weirder ones we really get to know. So it's playing a lot with connection. And I think probably in all of my work in general, my brother is a big inspiration for me because of who he is. He not only is he autistic, he has special needs. He's physically able, but he also is not, his comprehension is limited. He's not able to use language in the same way. So we really have to understand him and learn about him. And I'll be in the supermarket. He's older than me, so from when I can remember, I'm in the supermarket and he's off walking down the aisles talking to himself. And to me, this is completely normal and completely fine. And he's talking as if he's giving a conference to 100 people. And people look and they think, oh, who's this guy? But to me, he's my brother and it's completely normal. So I try to kind of keep this person in my mind and the complexity of who he is and the beauty of who he is and the humor of who he is, And it does come through in my work as well as my own personal challenges that I've had in my life and in myself. And I feel like this story also kind of summarizes one moment in my life which was completely bonkers. And I think that's it, actually. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You still have time. Any questions for Genevieve?
Oh, sorry. I'm just playing something else.
You can play more music.
No, I can play that later. Maybe.
There's no
At
question.
the end, on the outro of it.
Yeah, maybe when you are gone to your next appointment and we are having something to eat, you can play some more. But in the meantime, there's some room for questions.
Hi, what do you think the body is a good vessel for meaning in art, and how do you feel settled inside your own body while you're doing this?
That's so interesting. Also because actually my background is as a composer, when I received funding to make solo performances, which was something I really wanted to do because I wanted to be able to talk with the audience directly and be a storyteller and to share work from me. But the challenge of my body on stage was actually very confronting. And the first piece that I made as a solo was with the kitchen. And actually the kitchen was the star. Like, I was facilitating, so it was a duet really with me in this kitchen. And I I was hiding behind it. I did not transform, the kitchen transformed. And so slowly through making other works, I tried to take things away where I just allow myself to be there, until the latest piece that I made where I worked with a costume designer, and for a lot of the piece I'm naked and it's extremely vulnerable. But there was also something quite liberating about that, to kind of, because all of my concepts around emotions, my aim is not to say that there is a cure or there is a way of dealing with this, but rather say, this emotion is here. I also reached a point with the latest work that I made of saying, this is me, this is who I am here. And yeah, you can say what I am, you can also decide that this is a woman, whatever, but for me this is just who it is. And I find that really quite a fascinating thing and a massive step in my own artistic practice. Hope that answers your question.
If I understood correctly, you're perfectionistic. Do you make room for improvisation and failure, and how does it go together? Or do you use like the performance stage as to allow yourself to improvise, or do you want to control that environment as well? Or
yes. The thing is that I notice in my own process when I'm making something is that I'm very obsessive about all the decisions that I make. So I do have to create situations that provoke unpredictability and imperfection. And I find it really fascinating. And actually my first experience of working with, of being inspired by imperfection was when I made my graduation piece, which was for dancers. And I asked them to roll out a paper on stage, and then they had to go along, similar to the piece that you saw in the gallery with the long paper. They each had one of these, and they had to go along with a metronome, and they dropped ink on the paper, and then on the way back they had to play the notes with a little accordion. You don't have to understand that. The point is that what happened was that they had this little cup of ink at one end of the paper, and then when they reached the other end, they needed to roll the paper up, but one of them had left the cup of ink on the paper, and they should have left it next to the paper, so he couldn't roll the paper up. And it meant that he was sending telepathy to the other side of the stage to get somebody to move that cup off the paper. And then I was sitting in the audience thinking, what's going to happen? And then I just saw this hand coming out and taking the cup, and I thought it was brilliant. And I thought, these are the things that I wouldn't come up with, you know. And then these situations, how can I provoke these situations to happen? So the ensemble piece that you saw, it's like, okay, I have to create certain, frameworks for unpredictability to happen. But then every time it's going to be played, it will be different in its own way. So I try to balance that thing of perfectionism. And actually something that I can show you in the end is that with the solo piece that I talked about empathy, this is it is done very in a very organized way. It's extremely clean, and people say, wow, it's really impressive how you managed to be so on top of it with all the little knobs and the sounds and the text and everything. And I made a version with a band, and then I worked with 3 improvisers. And so I gave them the songs, and we played the songs from this show when we do a concert version. But then there's moments where they break out and they go completely free. And that's so much fun for me. And so I know myself, and I know that there's certain situations I need to just put myself in, and people I need to work with that push that improvisation out of me and push that spontaneity out of me, and in order to deal with that rigid perfectionism that I live with. There's your massive answer.
More questions? It's risky, you get real answers.
Yeah,
here.
you get a whole
Yeah,
lecture,
yeah.
sorry.
Anyone?
I have 2 very practical questions. The first one, where can I find all this? So that I can...
My website.
Alright, everything, like the videos are on there
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, you can see a link and a password on the page. You just have a list of works in there.
Amazing. The second one, oh gosh, what's the word? Are you perhaps in need of interns?
Yeah, so once I have this first has to happen in about 2 weeks. Oh my god.
Oh,
Yeah. But yeah, then,
I will be in contact.
good.
That was a very practical question. Nice. Any, you have a question? Right. Say your name.
Yeah, me again. Annie. What is the feeling that you feel the most when you create?
When I create,
Yeah.
Goodness. The most ideal feeling is excitement and to feel the spark of something. But I have to be in the right environment. So I have to put myself in the right environment. Of course, the subjects that I'm looking into, they're often quite heavy. They're around certain subjects or struggles that I am experiencing. But I need to have humour in the process, because that's when I'm more the most brave, basically. So I need to be in the environment with people where I feel that I have fun. And so even if something is a horrible situation, how can I perform this in a way that is going to not be too heavy and more relatable for the audience? And that means I need to be in an environment where I have fun. And of course there's always the crisis. 3 weeks in to the process is the crisis. And but I have gone through times where I really struggle and find it so stressful in a very negative way, and I find that that's not healthy for the work. So I try to work with people where I can feel the humor and feel the fun within a process or something, and then vulnerability can come through. So yeah, it's a mix of emotions, I think.
Hi,
what your methods of research are?
Yeah, so I begin with, starting from a personal experience, which I don't necessarily think I need to share with anybody. I just have that experience. And then I think, okay, what was the emotion from that experience? So whether that was loneliness, sadness, joy, empathy. And then I look into, okay, this emotion, how is this relevant within society? So I try to think about it, I take myself away from the experience of that emotion and just look at that emotion and think, okay, does this emotion matter to anybody else? And then I try to look really into that. Where does this emotion come from? What's the understanding behind it? What's going on in society today where people are experiencing this emotion? But the most important thing is that I've got my personal connection to it. And then I try to think, okay, how have other artists communicated this? So for example, with the subject of empathy, in the last piece I showed you, I understood that authors are extremely successful when it comes to working with empathy, because you manage to read a book, which is words on paper, but somehow you start to identify with the characters, and in a novel, you start to really climb inside and you create your whole world through this book. And so I looked then into the science of storytelling and how does it work, and how do our minds work with narrative and things like that. So it goes really, really deep. I spend months and months on the research and thinking, how exactly am I going to do this? And then I can start to think, okay, what needs to come first? The music, the text, the context, the set design, like that. Thanks.
Okay. Another hand. Do we still have time? Yeah. No? Give me your microphone.
I have a technical one. In the video that you made with the music, with your face, did the music come first and then you performed the face expressions, or they came together, or like the video first and then the music was adjusted to it?
No, the music came first. Yeah, I made the song. I wrote the text, made the song, and then thought, oh, let's make a music video. And then we thought about it.
You can find the whole performance online.
Yeah.
And where she's doing it live.
Yeah, I did. It's even freakier.
It's very scary.
It scares me.
I had a question about that. I read somewhere on the internet, I believe it was on our own website, an interview with you, where you insisted that the empathy thing was just about you were stressed because your birthday party, your mom was too proud of you because you were winning all the dance contests, and then you were kicking someone's shin.
Yeah.
It really hurt them.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was your empathy moment.
Yes, that's my first memory of empathy. It was kicking someone in the shin. Because like as a kid, you kind of you just want like to start playing like, and I was an adult, and I just went like whoop, and I kicked, and it hit his shin like on the bone, and then I saw his reaction, and it was really like, why did you do that? Like, and he looked so in pain, and then this was my first memory of kind of the shame and the realization of, oh, I think I actually really hurt that person, and then so actually the whole facial expression and things is me watching this person and thinking, oh God, I think I really hurt that guy.
So it's empathy for people that you feel responsible for.
Yeah, and this
for emotions with other people that you feel responsible for.
Yeah, and this person in particular, he was the person with the gold teeth, and I didn't fully understand him, so I also wanted to try to see what could come out of him. And so when I kicked him, I learned quite a lot about the person in that moment. So, quite nice person, didn't hit back,
Well, I think we're going to have to let go of you because you have another appointment, important. We'll see your video back in Museum Night because actually the next Museum Night episode in the Metric will be dedicated to the neurodivergent. And the whole thing will become a collection of amazing work, but also a mock diagnostic test. I told you once that we would ask you which diagnostic test your video would represent. Because we're actually going to play the music video, because she's a young mother and we have no idea when everything will be plannable again, so we're not planning. We're just planning to play the video for Museum Night. But do you have any ideas about what that test question the video would support?
Oh, I have
This
to
is
think
not
about
rehearsed.
that. No, we have to think. No, I have to think about that one. Yeah. What do
Okay,
you
I'll
think?
get back
What
to
do
you.
you think?
I don't know yet. But of course, the empathy thing is a very important one. So
Yeah.
you can, for instance, also imagine asking people if they feel empathic with something, or like I don't know,
Yeah.
or how they feel about controlling the situation or being responsible.
Yes.
I'm just also empathetic.
Yeah, and something behind a screen. Feeling of,
Oh, behind the screen.
Well, no, the fact that it's a person showing expression through a screen.
A lot.
What does that do? Yeah. We got to think about it more.
We will. And then we'll freeze that into the Museum Night diagnostic tests trajectory that you'll be part of with your work. After the break, we're going to go on with Ignaz Radke, who will also be showing a work in that exhibition. But tonight we'll be talking about very different research he did. But that's after we had something to eat together. Do I mention anything else? No. Just to get something to eat, land up, and get up and stand in line. Sorry for that. Yeah, in the kitchen. Are we ready for serving food? Team? Yeah? Great. Yes, and if you come back, then there's a list of discussion points on your table. If you would like to talk while you're eating. Genevieve?